Good morning. This is the innovation conversation. How you doing, Tom?
Doing well, Kevin. 2 weeks in a row in Vegas. Doing about as well as could be expected.
Yeah, your voice sounds like you're a little hoarse.
Yeah, everywhere you are, there's like background noise. You're having a conversation. A little maybe a little allergy in the air. And yeah, the voice wears out after a while, but we persevere.
So we should explain you are in Las Vegas for Shoptalk.
Job talk. Yep.
Um, and I'm not there, so I'm hoping that you're going to be able to kind of tell me what's going on. What are people talking about most of all? Are there a couple of subjects that are really top of mind in terms of what people are talking about?
I would say the themes are, and this is probably not a surprise to many folks that read the press. Um, I'd say two kind of key themes I'm seeing are a lot of retail media, which is not shocking. Basically, retail media discussions everywhere. Um, During the meals, they have these discussion prompters called table talks, and a lot of the so if you're sitting having a meal with, you know, the random people that you serendipitously meet at these conferences, they have questions for you to ask each other, which is pretty interesting. I mean, you're going to ask questions anyway because you're networking,
Yeah.
but I've seen a series of retail media type questions on the table to be asking everyone or asking each other. Hy-Vee's Red Media Network is pretty prevalent here in advertising placements at the show. Um, and yeah, just a lot of conversation around, definitely a lot of conversation around retail media. And then probably not all that shocking, the other kind of common theme is AI. It's basically AI everywhere. Most of the tech providers here have some element of AI in their pitch, in their positioning. Um, and people are asking, the conversation is it overhyped? Um, and I don't think it's over. I think it's overused. I don't know that it's overhyped. Um, I think you definitely are seeing, many tech companies, if you didn't already have AI as part of your secret sauce or, part of, what makes your product work for your customers. I think you're starting to see, most companies are actually trying to integrate some level of AI.
But when you
It may be rudimentary, it may not be, all that sophisticated, but I think you've got to have it in tech if you're in tech. So I don't think it's necessarily overhyped.
when you say it's not overhyped, but it may be overused, well, how do you mean overused?
That's a good, yeah. I think it's overused, and that every company puts it in their positioning. I think every company legitimately should have it in their product.
Right.
It should help make their product work better for users. It should help their product improve itself over time. Um, I don't know that it needs to be one of your top 3 or 4 bullet points when you're describing your company. And I think we see it used a lot in that manner. You walk around the exhibit hall in almost every booth. I mean, I'd say almost every, probably 70% of the booths have,
Right.
AI in their signage. And that's just, and once 70% have it, it's no longer differentiating. So I don't know. I think it's just overused. I do think though, um, that the hype is legit. I think that um, companies are using it more. That it is the promise of it is, very solid.
Hmm.
Um, but and it is where tech is going. So I think it has to be part of your playbook.
When companies are hyping it in or promoting it as one of their top 2 or 3 bullet points, is it often a situation where they were already had it, they've been using some form of AI for years, but now just because it's sexy, they're mentioning it? I mean, would it be like, suddenly Minute Maid saying orange juice now with vitamin C? Well, it's always had vitamin C. Or Alexa now with AI, but it's always had AI.
Um, I think that's a fair question. I think that I think I don't know what the number is of the 70, right? Is it 20, 30, 50%, of the 70? I think you're definitely having companies use it that have had it in the product for a while, some form of AI in the product for a while. And then I do think you probably are also having or seeing other companies that are using some of the open source, AI models that are available and integrating that into their product, which is a little bit dangerous because it's not super differentiating, but I think you're starting to see the elements of that, creep in. So I don't know what the mix is. There's definitely both camps, though.
Yeah.
Definitely both camps.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting in the story, and we had it on Morning Newsbeat earlier this week about I think it was a Washington Post columnist who tried Rufus, which is Amazon's version of
Amazon's.
ChatGPT, and said it was awful. I mean, it was almost so bad as to be useless. Conceded that it could get a lot better, that it's early days.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, the problem with so many of these things, it seems to me, is they get to the, I'll say overhyped, even though you said it's not overhyped, but they get promoted so much or hyped so much that when they don't work as well as people think, then people just move on.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe I didn't, it is definitely hyped. You could argue when I say overhyped, I think
It's
there is
got
a lot of hype.
listen,
It's
it's got
valid hype.
almost limitless potential, right? I mean,
Exactly. So I think the hype around it is valid. I think that it's being used excessively in positioning. Rufus. Now I haven't been flighted to try Rufus. I believe Rufus is still Amazon's flighting it, and customers are getting access to it, in drips.
very
So
selectively, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't either.
yeah. So most of these models are not amazing out of the gate.
Right,
They haven't been super trained, and as Amazon, you have to decide what's the right time to put it out in the customer's hands.
right,
And you generally kind of need to put it out before it's fully ready for prime time.
right.
Yeah, but the question is if the gap is so big, um, and it's not, you know, evidently closing the gap, to your point, will customers just say,
Yeah.
it's not for me, I'm not going to use it. And then the capability is wasted.
Are there trends that you're seeing in terms of where people are talking about AI applications mostly? Is it around, um, customization? Is it around collaboration? Are there things that you're seeing that seem to be rising to the top in terms of usage?
I think where you see it mostly is in the customer service conversational elements of platforms, right? So if you're communicating inside a company, if you're communicating with customers, I
Mhm.
think you're seeing a lot of AI applications of that. And then absolutely a lot of AI applications of personalization,
Yeah.
right? Making the user experience for whatever tech be tuned, based on the activities of the user, and then the responsiveness of the system to those activities, and then kind of the optimization around that. To me, those are probably the two biggest ones we see.
So when you talk about, I want to go back to retail media networks for a second. So when you talk about they're everywhere, Hy-Vee just being one of them, are they there? What is their purpose? Are they looking for advertisers? Are they what's their top goal or two to while they're at Shoptalk?
Yeah, I think they're definitely looking for advertisers to come into the platform. No doubt about it. And interestingly, I don't see a ton of CPG here. There's some, um, but I do think it's a little bit underrepresented. There's a brand innovators event in town.
Right.
And so, and I popped down to that last evening, and that was crawling with CPGs. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think you see as many of them here as you would expect. But yeah, it's absolutely to recruit customers.
Are there fewer CPGs there than you've seen in past years?
I don't know. We're really kind of one day into the show. It kicked off yesterday morning. Well, there's a little bit Sunday afternoon, but for the most part, it kicked off yesterday.
Right.
Um,
And we're recording this on Tuesday, so we should say
we're
that. So,
recording this, yes, yes, yes. We're
right.
recording this Tuesday. It'll air Wednesday morning, which will be the last morning of the show. So we got a good half of the show still in front of us. Um, but I would say, maybe a little bit less than I've seen in the past.
Yeah.
A lot of tech provider meeting room kind of, meetings, and I am seeing more CPGs around there. Not necessarily tons of CPGs, on the exhibit floor and walk around. But that's really unscientific. And one thing I will say is the badges here, um, the well, you can't see because it's too shiny, but the organization name is really small on the badge. So you see the person's name really well. We have to look super close to be
Yeah.
able to see where they're from. So there could be more here than it feels.
Um, but part of the reason I ask that question is, I think Hy-Vee is just one example because whenever I see retailers talking about this stuff, a lot of companies have said this is going to totally change the economics of our business.
Yeah.
And I can't, and I know I've said this before, and we've talked a lot about this, but I can't help but think that that's the rule. I mean, you want it to, yes, if it can affect the economics of the business, that's great. But if that's your prime motivation for getting into the space, it just strikes me that the potential for making misguided moves, which are going to be totally focused on ancillary dollars and eventually alienating the customer
Hmm.
or even I don't know if it's worse or not, but the customer says, it's so much noise. I'm just not going to
Hmm.
pay attention to it. Like, you know, we
That's a
all
big risk.
we all speed through commercials, on television. And so it's got to be a compelling ad that seems relevant to, your customers. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, on Amazon, you can pay a premium for the ad-free version of Prime Video, right?
Right.
You can't pay a premium for the ad-free version of a shopping experience in a
Right.
store, right? They can't turn all the ads off as you shop.
No, and that's one of the reasons I guess you would use AI to personalize things. So
For sure.
I'm
Yeah.
only seeing advertising that's relevant to me, but
Yeah.
that's not my sense that that's what people are doing right
No, 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 absolutely. I mean, in a utopian world, right, your app is super personalized, performing, for you based on where you are in the store and what you're doing.
now. Right.
And the media messages that are delivered to you are super relevant and impactful on your experience. The shelf edge, lights up, it recognizes it's you, and the shelf edge lights up with information that's important to you or promotions that are important to you. And if there's a screen in the store, that screen is, showing an ad that is relevant to you. Like
Right.
that's utopian. That's really hard to pull off. So, I think if you're doing all of those things, which a good retail media network will do,
Right.
you really have to, be careful. And there is zero doubt that the primary motivation right now in retail media is to earn dollars.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's to earn dollars. You don't hear a lot of retailers say, I'm investing in retail media because it's going to help my customers. It's going to make the shopping experience better. Um, I do think retailers that are super mindful of that in rolling out the retail media can do well with it. But right now, I think it's just a really, big kind of land grab to, establish a position in the market, to be, known and relevant to brands, um, prove efficacy of the media that you are deploying, get those initial dollars and get those repeat dollars.
Yeah. And listen, I guess if what you described as being utopian, you're right. It's really hard right now. But my guess is it won't be hard in, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years.
Totally agree.
That's where all these companies need to be going. And while I get the land grab part of it, you know, again, they could burn out the customers. They could burn out customers before it has a chance
Absolutely.
to reach the utopian, and then it'll be useless.
They've got to be very careful not to do that. Absolutely agree. And I think that there's a real risk that we get to like oversaturation
Right.
too fast. And that's just, you got to be super mindful of that.
And I can't. I'm not there, so I can't speak to that. But it seems to me that that the kind of skepticism that we're talking about, it's not really cynicism, but it's skepticism and it's sort of cautionary. That ought to be something that's talked about on the stages there and in those meal talkers, right? That they have to be careful, that you can't just promote technology for technology's sake
100%.
because that'll only take you so far.
Yeah, 100%. It needs to be, a key topic of the conversation. I do think that, the most forward thinking, the most customer centric retailers do recognize that.
Right.
I would be very surprised if they didn't. So, I think you're definitely seeing, I mean, I really do trust that most retailers are approaching it to strike the right balance. Um, but I do think if you're erring one side or the other early on now, I think you're seeing retailers err to doing too much.
Right.
Again, you're doing too much, but it's still not. I mean, it's not to the point yet where it, absolutely blows up the customer experience. Now, we would argue Amazon's gone too far with it, and they have blown up their customer experience with it. But Amazon's been in the business for a long time. They're the 800-pound gorilla. I don't think you see other retailers, quite as saturated in retail media as Amazon is. And yet you have, retailers that are aspiring to have an ad business that can be as impactful to their business, right, as Amazon's ad business is. I think that, I just think that, they've got to be really careful in taking these early steps.
Well, and again, the cautionary note, Amazon is almost more capable than anybody of personalizing the experience because they've got the data and they've shown that they're willing to use it. And yet, you know, Kevin, here's 5 books you might like because of things you've bought in the past has given way to here's 5 books we want you to look at before you get to what
Right.
you wanted to look at.
Because we're getting paid to show them to you.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
strikes me as being
Yeah.
that is quicksand. And
Absolutely.
and it's going to be hard for them to back away from that because they're going to get addicted to
Totally.
that money, and
Yep.
that's the problem that everybody has to. I think that's the quicksand
Absolutely.
everybody has to avoid.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think though, in the world that we are transitioning into now, the omni-channel, adaptive, integrated, world of where retailers need to connect with the end customer through a variety of mechanisms, and they need to serve the customer by store, by pickup, by delivery. You have added cost to the retail model that wasn't there 10 years ago.
Right.
And so I do think it's fair that retailers offer new programs to get new and incremental dollars from brands to help with the profit equation to help offset that, right? So there is like real good reason for doing it. I just think together between the brands and the retailers, they've got to make the deal, the value proposition for the customer. They've got to make that hum.
All right. Well, listen. Enjoy Las Vegas. Enjoy the rest of the show. Take care of your voice.
Thank you. I feel pretty good.
And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds great, Kevin.
All right.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
See you, everybody.